Yo, what is going on, everybody? Thank you for clicking on this video. Now today we're going to be going over the top 15 quarterback and tight ends for week 10. I released my top 30 running back and wide receiver rankings before this, so if you haven't seen those, make sure to go check those out. Also need to mention that the Ravens, the Bengals, the Jets, and the Patriots are all on bye, so the main people that won't be involved will be Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry, and Tyler Conklin. So none of those guys will be mentioned here. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the rankings. We are going to start off with our quarterbacks first. So first up is going to be Josh Allen. Pretty obvious, quarterback 1 of the year, lead MVP candidate. He does have an issue in his elbow. He's being evaluated right now, so we don't know the situation on it, if he's going to miss time or be out for longer. We don't really know. Regardless though, he's Josh Allen. He can even run the ball and be great for your fantasy team. He's going to be a top 3 quarterback if he's playing no matter what. I got him here at my quarterback 1 this week, going up against the Minnesota Vikings, which have actually given up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks over the past 4 weeks. So feel pretty good about it if he's going to play, but make sure you monitor that situation. After him is going to be Patrick Mahomes, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've given up the 3rd most fantasy points over the past 4 weeks. Plus he's Patrick Mahomes, so nothing to really worry about. Going to be an elite option every single week. And the last guy in this tier is going to be Jalen Hurts. Another MVP candidate, has been absolutely dominating this year, and going up against the Washington Commanders, a little bit tougher matchup than these guys have, but somebody that you're not really worrying about the matchup because he can get it done through the air, on the ground, wherever he needs to get it done. He's going to be fantastic for fantasy and a top option every single week. Now moving on to the next tier, at my quarterback 4, I'm going to have Tua. This offense just seems absolutely unstoppable. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are always wide open. It's unbelievable, and Tua's able to get everything out quickly, on time, in the right spot. It's pretty fun to watch. And going up against the Cleveland Browns this week, nothing to be too worried about, so going to be a great option every single week, just mostly given his weapons and the offensive scheme that they run. And after him, we're going to have the new kid, Justin Fields, who's just been absolutely dominating these past weeks. He broke the rushing record last week for a quarterback in a regular season game and scored 40 plus fantasy points. But beyond that, the 2 weeks before, he's been fantastic as well. It seems like they really just let him run loose, and it's been awesome for their team and for fantasy football. No reason for it to really stop, and they're playing the Detroit Lions, which is historically one of the worst defenses ever. I have a feeling it's going to be another fantastic day for Justin Fields, so if you're able to scoop him up, give yourself a high five and enjoy your wins coming forward. And after him, I'm going to have Kyler Murray, who's definitely doing better since having D-Hop back, and although he hasn't really had those blow-up games, he's honestly been relatively consistent for your lineup. Going up against the LA Rams, though, going to be a tough matchup, but just given his running ability and now his weapon with D-Hop, he's still going to be a solid option, but I moved Justin Fields ahead of him after thinking about it a bit more, just given the upside that Justin Fields has. Now moving on to the next tier, we're going to start it off with Justin Herbert, who has really been struggling. I could even put him lower than this. He's played the Niners this week, which you kind of think is a bad matchup, but they've actually given up the most points to quarterbacks over the past 4 weeks. The issue with Justin Herbert is just that he doesn't have Keenan Allen probably, and definitely doesn't have Mike Williams, so his 2 top options are not there, and pretty much hasn't had them all year, and he just hasn't been very good. I haven't really seen any of those explosion games and has definitely struggled. So I could see him going even lower, but like I don't want to pick up somebody random off the waiver wire. Like if I was able to pick up Tua or Justin Fields or someone, then I would definitely play them over Justin Herbert, but I don't want to just play somebody just to play them because he has been struggling. I think that he's still going to be a decent option. After him, I'm going to have Dak Prescott, who's coming off of bye, and the week before the bye had an absolutely great game. They're playing the Green Bay Packers though this week, which have actually been a pretty tough matchup against quarterbacks. I think Dak should be fine though, so not too worried about him. Got him here ranked to my quarterback 8. After him, we're going to have Geno Smith, who has really been consistent this year, honestly. Got the great weapons with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Scored about 20 points the past 2 weeks. And they're playing the Bucks, who have not really been that great. Pretty middle of the road against quarterbacks over the past 4 weeks, so I'm not too worried about the matchup, and I think that he should be pretty consistent. I don't think he has the upside that he might have shown in the beginning of the year, but I do think that he's going to be a solid quarterback who can get you about 20 points almost every single week. And the last guy who's kind of in a similar situation, we're going to have Thug and Cousins. Just one of the most hilarious storylines, seeing him on like the plane. Bro, first off, Kirk Cousins is absolutely jacked. God damn. And I love him wearing all the chains. It's absolutely hilarious. And I think that teams that really like each other, like it seems like they do, they tend to perform a lot better. They got a tough matchup this week against Buffalo, but there's just so many elite weapons there that I think that he's going to be fine no matter what. But definitely a little bit worried just given the matchup, but with Adam Thielen, TJ Hawkinson, who was very involved, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, they're going to be just fine. So I'm not too worried about it. Moving on to the last tier, we're going to start it off with Tom Brady, who been throwing the ball like 50 times a game, but just hasn't really produced into great fantasy production. And going up against Seattle, while it might seem like it's a pretty easy matchup, they've actually been pretty good against quarterbacks in the past 4 weeks. On the last drive looked like vintage Tom Brady. I'm, just praying that they're able to figure that out so Chris Godwin and Mike Evans can get going. But I don't want to, put him up into the higher tiers until we can really see it, for a full game. And we definitely have not seen that yet. So I got him here at my quarterback 11. And after him, I'm going to have Jimmy Garoppolo going up against the LA Chargers, who've actually been a really tough matchup against quarterbacks. But there's just so many elite weapons on this offense that he's going to be a good streamer every single week. And it should be a high scoring game with Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. There's just so many weapons that can produce for him, because that's what you're really banking on when you play Jimmy, is that he's going to be kind of, giving these short passes to these playmakers who then go and make plays. Luckily, they have some of the best in the NFL at that, so there's always going to be opportunity with him here, but definitely a little bit worried just given the matchup of the LA Chargers, but hopefully it's a high scoring game and all those guys can show out. Then at my quarterback 13, we're going to have Trevor Lawrence. Nothing too special last week, but we've seen his upside with his rushing. Has scored a couple rushing touchdowns this year, and playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, relatively easy matchup, but the main thing is that Kansas City will be scoring a lot of points, which is going to force the Jaguars to have to throw the ball a lot, and that's going to give some good opportunity for Trevor Lawrence and his weapons to produce. I would like to see them get Travis Etienne more involved in the passing game. We'll see if that's going to happen, because it hasn't really yet, but I think Trevor Lawrence is a decent streamer. Got him here in my quarterback 3rd. After that, it's going to be Jared Goff going up against the Bears. They traded away their 2 best defensive players, and he finally has pretty much all of his weapons back, but he's kind of struggled the past couple weeks. This is definitely a bounce back matchup for him, so if he can't do anything here, then he's not going to be a streaming viable candidate anymore. But I got him right here for right now, my quarterback 14. And the last guy to mention is going to be Daniel Jones. He had a bye last week and really struggled the week before that, but Houston's not a very good defense, although they have been really good against quarterbacks. That's mostly because they give up so many points to the running backs. I think Daniel Jones always has an opportunity to be solid. Just given what we've seen from him with his rushing ability, he always has a chance to, run for 50 plus yards and a touchdown, basically averaging 50 yards rushing this year. So somebody you can definitely take your shot on, but not too excited to play. Some other guys right outside, Derek Carr would be right outside there. Russell Wilson, maybe Marcus Mariota, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'm not too excited about playing any of those guys. So if you really want to take your shot over like Daniel Jones or Jared Goff, I can totally get behind it. Let me know if you got questions specifically about it. Hopefully though, you got some better options up here. Unless you're in a super flex league, then obviously you're going to be playing some of these guys. All right, here are my top 15 quarterbacks. We're going to be moving on to the tight ends now. All right, to start it off, we're going to have Travis Kelce at my tight end 1. No Mark Andrews this week, so no one else going to be in this tier with them. Saw 17 targets last week, 10 receptions for 100 yards. Nobody's in the same tier as him. Pretty easy. So we will move on to the next tier. We're going to start that off with Dallas Goedert, who absolutely balled out last week. They are playing the Washington Commanders, which have been the hardest matchup against tight ends. Goddard, somebody I'm not too worried about, though. I think he's going to be just fine. This is a great offense that he's a part of, and he's one of the main pieces in it. We saw 100 yards and a touchdown out of him last week. Don't predict that for this week, but he should be a great option again. After him, we're going to have George Kittle, who is going up against the LA Chargers. Another person who just has really high upside given his athletic ability and the part of offense that he's on. There are just so many weapons. Like I talked about with Jimmy G just a second ago, there are just so many weapons that not every single week they're all going to be able to produce, but he has an upside that not much tight ends really have. So you're going to be playing him pretty much no matter what if you have him, but definitely expect that there's going to be some bad weeks. He's been really good the past 3 weeks, which is awesome to see. Hopefully he can continue it here. And the last guy I'm going to have in this tier is going to be Zach Ertz, another one of the main targets in Arizona with Hollywood Brown out. Saw 8 targets last week, 5 receptions, 40 yards and a touchdown. Never going to be, a super high yardage guy, going to get good volume and always has an opportunity for a touchdown. Pretty safe floor with him with decent upside. Definitely not the same upside as Kittle, but a lot safer. So if you somehow have both of them, you can play them depending on what you need, but they're both going to be good options no matter what. Now, moving on to the next tier, we're going to have TJ Hawkinson, who had his debut with the Minnesota Vikings last week. I was pretty low on him last week just because we hadn't seen anything, obviously, and he just got traded, so hard to really trust him, but he saw 9 targets, caught all 9 of those for 70 yards, which is fantastic to see. He was on the field for 91% of the snaps, so obviously going to be a part of this offense, and I think we can be pretty comfortable with him going forward. Definitely a lot more than I thought he was going to be. After him, we're going to have Pat Freiermuth, who has been one of Kenny Pickett's favorite targets coming in so far. They're also coming off a bye week where they traded Chase Claypool, so there's going to be even more target volume opening up for him. In the past 2 weeks, he saw 9 targets and 7 targets. So with that type of volume and somebody who we've seen with Pat Fryermuth, who's very talented and even more target volume possibly coming. Going to be a great option every single week. Tough matchup against the Saints though, but somebody who I think you kind of just got to play regardless given his talent and opportunity. After him, we're going to have Gerald Everett going up against the Niners, which is a pretty tough matchup for tight ends. Saw 8 targets last week, but didn't turn into much. Only 5 receptions for 36 yards. But with Keenan Allen out and Mike Williams out, Gerald Everett's going to get a ton of looks and should be a pretty good part of this offense. So hopefully we're going to have better things coming for him, but we'll just have to wait and see. But definitely a good part of this offense and a pretty solid option for anyone. Next, at my tight end 8, we're going to have the rookie Greg Dulcich, who is very interesting. Going up against the Tennessee Titans, pretty easy matchup actually for tight ends. He's only played in 3 career games, but he's been pretty productive in all of them so far. Hasn't scored less than 8 fantasy points, which for a tight end is really good. And as a rookie who's never played before, definitely great to see. This offense isn't very good, but he definitely seemed to be a bright spot in it before the bye week. I'm hoping that they got him even more integrated, but I think he's going to be a great option this week and hopefully going forward. And the last guy that I'm going to have in this tier is going to be Dalton Schultz. He's finally pretty much healthy, and we saw him back the week before the bye with Dak Prescott, where he had 7 targets for 6 receptions and 74 yards, which is kind of what we expected more with when we all drafted him. So it's good to see that. I think as they get back and more healthy and more chemistry building again, he should be even more involved, but still going to be a solid option. All right, now moving on to the last here, we're going to have Kyle Pitts. Another pretty down week from him last week. I don't think we can expect any consistency with him, but it was nice to still see 7 targets. They're going up against Carolina, which is a pretty middle of the road matchup, but he played them just 2 weeks ago and went 5 for 80 on them and a touchdown. So I'm hoping we can get a little bit more of that. That'd be great to see, but I don't think that we're going to have any consistency with Kyle Pitts this year. So we kind of like a streaming tight end, low end tight end 1 rest of the season, just because we have seen some upside, but nothing we can really rely on. After him, we're going to have Tyler Higbee, who has been very disappointing the past couple of weeks, and I probably would have him a lot lower if he wasn't playing the Arizona Cardinals, which is one of the 2 easiest matchups in the NFL for tight ends. So if he can't produce this week, then he's just going to be completely dead for the rest of the season. He started off the year so hot, just so many targets, so involved, and I don't really know what happened. They kind of just cut him out. But if that's what the team wants to do with him, then we just got to keep playing him as such. This is kind of the make or break week for him, so we'll see what happens. After him, we're going to have Taysom Hill, who's kind of the same story with him every week, always going to have opportunity to score, and we'll definitely get some usage, but very hard to predict where it's going to be, whether it's going to be in the passing, receiving, rushing game. We'll always have an opportunity to score, like I said, but definitely hard to really rely on him to be consistent every single week, but has some really, really high upside like we've seen. After him, we're going to have Cade Otton, who is filling in. He had 5 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown last week, which is awesome to see. Tom Brady's always been a fan of using his tight end, and he's a tight end filling in for them right now. Also playing Seattle, which is the easiest matchup for tight ends, and everyone is absolutely dominated against them. So really good opportunity for him to show that he can really be a part of this offense here. I think that he's going to be a solid play this week. After him, we're going to have Evan Ingram at my tight end 14 going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been a pretty consistent part of this offense, and the Chiefs are a really easy matchup for tight ends. Didn't really do much last week, but I mean, we're around tight end 15. These people aren't going to be consistent every week, but we've seen him be used quite a bit. Saw a 4-week span where he got 6 or more targets every single week and was pretty consistent for fantasy. So somebody who you can definitely take your shot on, and in a matchup where they should be having to throw the ball a lot, definitely going to be some good opportunity. And the last guy I'm going to put in my top 15 is going to be Mike Gesicki. Didn't really do much last week, but this is one of the elite offenses in the NFL, and he's always going to have an opportunity to score in that. We have seen his snap percentage drop just a little bit down to about 50%, so we'll monitor that going forward, but you can definitely take a flyer on him if you really need to. So yeah, here are my top 15 tight ends. Let me know if you guys think about them, if you got any questions. Here are my quarterbacks just one more time. So yeah, here are my rankings. I put out all my other rankings for the other positions, so if you got any questions, let me know if you got them. Like I said, drop a like on this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will see y'all later.